Yeah, so it really does come down to the sort of talent equation, and it's no longer a mystery or a best-kept secret how human talent works. We really do have a relatively good understanding of the mechanics of it and of how to do it. The best books on the topic, probably Carol Dweck and Mindset is a very good one. I think Outliers has some very good information. There are a couple of other titles, but they all agree broadly on what we've unearthed, what we've learned, and essentially how we tick when it comes to learning something new. You mentioned the 10,000 hours idea. It's an idea that has been argued and debated to the extent that we go, it's more or less correct. Yeah, you've got detractors who say less or more, or whatever the case might be, but it really is, it's a fairly solid and accepted idea. And what that amounts to is you have to have the input, the education to begin with. At the same time as that, you have to have something from your side, the will, the desire, the love of the thing. Now, if we just stop there for a second, you can actually see why. For example, school kids don't necessarily love subjects like mathematics, and they feel that they're not good at it, they're not talented at it. What's actually missing from the talent equation there is the love of the thing. It's the yearning. And that even starts at the sort of level of going, why do we have to do it in the first place? Do I see the point? Do I see the purpose? Do I understand where that would take me? So igniting the imagination, getting a young mind to see the point, the reason, and to yearn to do the thing. That's step one. You've got to love it. Then, on top of that love, you need the instruction. That's step two. And once you have those two working together, then we go into our 10,000 hours equation. And you had a great conversation earlier, and picking up on your previous theme, about laziness versus hard work. There is a lot of research on the kind of work you have to do to develop talent, whether we're talking public speaking, learning to play the piano, learning to speak a new language, whatever the case might be. And essentially it breaks down to the idea that you have to do it repeatedly, you have to do it often, and it mustn't be fun. And that may sound like an odd thing to say, but when we say it mustn't be fun, what we're actually saying is you have to be pushing yourself a little. If you're not going a little out of your comfort zone, if you are not spending a bit more time each day concentrating on it, you're not actually learning. The term they use for that is deliberate practice as opposed to simply practice. And the distinction between those two is a guy pottering around on a golf course over a weekend is just doing practice, but if you do one act over and over, for instance, hitting a ball out of a bunker, that's deliberate practice. So that's kind of a very quick breakdown of what goes into talent. You need the love, you need the knowledge, the education, and then it's the hours of practice.
I suppose it could be put in a phrase, your dreams only go as far as your determination.
Yeah, very much so.
No pain, no gain.
Absolutely. And at the same time, without the knowledge and the how-to, it doesn't matter how passionate you are. You might otherwise be something of a prodigy, but without the how-to knowledge, you will only go so far. You'll hit your own natural talent cap. Okay, that's a very valid question, and it's one that I think a lot of people can relate to. I mean, the fear is probably the biggest deal. Once you get past that, and let me start by saying the fear never totally goes away, and I'll say that up front, but it does diminish over time. It gets much, much easier. I do believe if you are completely fearless before a presentation, there's probably something a little wrong. You are maybe not taking it seriously enough.
So does the fear give you the edge?
It does. It makes sure that you're focused, and it also means that you are worried about how you're going to do for this audience, that you're concerned at the most basic human level that what you're about to do is good enough. So we start with a simple idea that the fear never completely goes away, and that's perfectly okay. Now, in terms of how to overcome fear, try this little experiment with me. Imagine yourself standing in a massive white open space, something like that scene from The Matrix where they're about to load all the weaponry.
Oh, yeah.
There you are, floating in space, it's whiteness all around you. You look down at your feet and you discover that you are standing in the center of a circle. You're the bullseye. Now, that circle is your comfort zone. If you stay within that comfort zone, you are quite safe, you are unthreatened, but you do not grow. Now, glance down again, and a second circle draws itself around the first one. You now have two concentric circles. The next circle out is the growth zone. That is, if you push yourself a little, you're going to learn, you're going to develop. You glance down and you see a third circle drawn onto the floor below you. And beyond that is what we're going to delicately call the trauma zone.
The trauma.
And that is what we would call too far. So let's put this into practical terms. Say you've got a kid at school who wants to learn presentation skills. They've got to do their first speech. getting up in front of the class and doing a 1 minute, here's who I am, here's my family. That would realistically be the growth zone. That's okay. It's a bit scary, but it's enough that the person can handle it and they will grow and they will learn as a result. But if their first one is a massive Eisteddfod, they've never done this before, and it's for marks, they're being judged, it's an austere audience, and they feel that this event is life-changingly important, the chances are you're going to do more damage than good. You've taken a person too far beyond what they can actually do. So that simple model gives us a way of thinking about this. You do need to stretch yourself. You don't want to stretch yourself too far too early. Simple as that.
Like a muscle, really.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. And what you are doing is you are acclimating to what it's like to be a little bit scared. And each time you do it, you're a little less scared, and you realize you can do a bit more. You can push a little further, you can be a little bolder, you can explore more than you did the last time. You might venture more of an opinion, you might voice a strong idea, and so on and so forth, and that's how it goes. And you find at the top echelons of professional speaking, you have these massively opinionated, strong viewpoint personalities. And what they're actually doing is they have taken a body of knowledge which they have mastered. I mean, whatever their realm is, they know it backwards and forwards. And it's not just that they are imparting information anymore, they now have an incredibly strong point of view, and they are basically campaigning for a world view. And that realistically is kind of what we might call the highest levels of professional speaking. But there again, you can see that it's just a progression along a continuum. You start with a scared kid who doesn't want to say what he or she thinks. You end up with a person who knows their stuff and boldly tells you what they think. But it's a continuum. That's all it is.
Is it like riding a bicycle?
Absolutely, 100%. So if you've ever tried to, say, learn another language, the more time you spend immersed in it and doing it, the easier it comes. I mean, your brain just kind of gets into the habit. Take 1 week off and you will feel the difference. And it really does make a difference. For myself, if I have a, say for example, I have a busy week with 3 or 4 speeches in a row, by the second or third one, I am no longer feeling the nerves. I'm almost going through the motions in the sense of you walk up, you connect with the audience, and it just works. However, if I have as much as 2 weeks off between presentations, I myself can feel the difference. That is long enough that I can feel a little bit of that rust settling in. So one of the great problems with public speaking and presenting is just that frequency. There are a couple of ways that you can actually solve that on purpose. The first one, join the Toastmasters Club, go and present as often as you possibly can. The second one, if you're doing it for a living, that keeps you in the groove, it keeps you in the flow. The third thing that you can do is simply to stand up in front of a mirror and deliver passionate addresses to your own reflection. Sounds ridiculous. Don't do it in front of family members. They will laugh you under the table, but it works. There is absolutely no doubt that it does. And from a sort of a research perspective, the reason it works is based on a substance in the brain called myelin. Now, the analogy for this one works like this. Imagine your brain as kind of like an internet service. When you do not practice something often, it's as though you lack broadband. You've got an old, slow connection. And that's exactly what it feels like. You stand up in front of a group of people, and it's as though you have to think about your hands. Then you have to think about a sentence. Then you notice something in the audience, and it's clunky and it's slow. When you do this often, your brain uses this myelin, which promotes faster messages from one side of the brain to the other. What you then find is that based on how fast the messages are traveling around your brain, you are caught up in the flow of body language, thinking about your next thought, observing the audience, reading the mood in the room, and looking at the time to make sure that you've got enough time to conclude a philosophical idea, all at the same time, and you're not overwhelmed. So the frequency of practice is a very, very big deal in any talent building endeavor.